The man with much life force inside of him has greater influence on the world around him. Those with less life force exert less influence. There is more room today than ever before for leaders who have been thoroughly trained and who have great powers of concentration, persistence, and physical and moral vigor. There are bigger opportunities waiting for the man that can make good than ever before, but the chances for the man that dissipates are becoming less. Life has become one big battle. Our powers are developed by opposition. But strange as it may seem, that which men should prize above everything else, his strength, the glory of manhood, is lost by abuse at an early age. The number of men practicing semen retention is extremely rare. I would estimate it at well below 1% of the population, and perhaps closer to 1 in 1,000 or even less. The fundamental concept behind semen retention is conserving life essence, or energy. Humans all contain a finite level of energy that slowly dissipates until the end of one's life is met, provided they have not succumbed to premature illness or accident. If you are conserving your energies, then by merit of your practice, you have placed yourself into a very small minority of men on earth, and thus receive benefits that only a very small minority of men can receive. This gives you access to a deep well of energy that you are free to draw on for your life activities, a well of energy that most men have dissipated due to sexual excess. That is why, on semen retention, you will gain a significant advantage over others in pursuit of success. You will have an edge over the vast majority of those that deplete themselves daily. It is true, however, that some people advance through life much more easily and smoothly than others. We often meet someone and instantly know this person has something special, some quality that we don't, that this person is going places. They attract more positive attention, they look better, speak better, and behave in a more likable way. There are all sorts of reasons as to why some people seem more optimized for success in the workplace, the social world, and just life in general. It appears some people were built for success. Many such people come from a long line of strong genetics, whereas others grew up in an environment that sped up their social development. For many people, the central source of conflict and angst in their life is coming to terms with their own organism, with the genetics they were assigned at birth. The face, the body, and brain you have received can dictate much of your life trajectory. This kind of face will open these kinds of doors, or this kind of body will attract these kinds of people. Conversely, that kind of face will repel those kinds of people, and that kind of body will close those kinds of doors. It may seem in many ways that by fate of our genetics, our destiny has already been predetermined, has already been doomed. Those without a strong will in life allow their genetics to dictate where society chooses to place them. If you do not wish to follow the destiny of your genetics, then you will need to develop a strong desire to carve out your own path. The tall, handsome guy, the weak, bald guy, the short, angry guy, all these human types that go through society will all be roughly categorized by the people and institutions in society, and thus much of their life trajectory will be shaped around these traits and how society perceives those traits. The physical traits you were born with elicit non-physical emotions from those you associate with, and those emotions influence the state and closeness of your relationships, and your relationships dictate your access to opportunities and ultimately your overall position in society. If you were born handsome, tall, and rich, then there are a lot of doors open to you that are not open to the next man. If you were born short, overweight, and unattractive, then there are a lot of doors closed to you that are not closed to others. This does not mean you have to accept this fate, just that if you wish for a different fate, you will have to fight harder against society to get it. You will have to show your worth in different ways, perhaps ways that are harder to achieve. If you're at a disadvantage because of some inherited traits, then you should absolutely fight your way through society to succeed. Some of you will not have to struggle, whilst many others will have to fight nail and tooth. If you have to fight, then by all means rise to the occasion. Don't get weak and indignant about the rules not being in your favor. If the chips are stacked against you, then fight harder to win anyway. He that will conquer must fight. Pursuing success is a game that you can choose to play or choose to ignore. There is an argument to be had for both sides. Reality is constructed in much the same way a game is. It abides by rules that are regulated by cause and effect. The good-looking attract the affections of others. The powerful attract respect. The weak and unattractive are met largely with indifference. Certain traits induce certain emotional responses. This occurs across the board of humanity. Human nature is quite predictable in this sense, and although geography and culture creates some variation, the underlying principle is essentially the same. Humanity behaves much like an algorithm, organizing the traits and qualities perceived of as high value into the higher echelons of society, and the traits recognized as low value into the lower sectors. If you wish to have success in the material world, then you must build your own value. You must play the game. So whilst you are here in this life, I recommend playing to succeed. Otherwise, you will have to spend the rest of life coming to terms with your own position society has allotted you. Not everyone can succeed. In fact, most will not. In order to succeed, you need to have the will to succeed. As Napoleon Hill puts it, you need to have a burning desire for success. The strength of your will is perhaps the most important factor to dictate how far you will go in pursuit of success. To learn how to develop your strength of will is thus a requisite for being successful in life. The necessary ingredient for a strong will is abundant energy. You need strong energy to develop a strong will. Conversely, a sexually dissipated man will find great trouble in generating enough energy to fuel their desires. A dissipated man will generate weak energy. A strong energy current in the body creates strong magnetism within the individual. Magnetism is the crown jewel of human power. It is the bioelectrical current in man. A man with strong magnetism is seen as attractive even when his physical characteristics suggest otherwise. Magnetism indicates a man's abundance of life and vitality inside of him and is thus seen as highly desirable. A man full of magnetism is full of life force energy. By the retention and reabsorption of the seminal fluids in the body, accepting only such as are used for purposes of procreation, the magnetic qualities as well as the mental and spiritual powers of the individual are wonderfully increased. This is strikingly illustrated in the case of great inventors and scientists who, while working out their problems, become so absorbed in their work that they never even think of the sex relation. They hardly think of food, and their hours of sleep are so greatly reduced that under ordinary conditions they would be prostrated. Yet they continue under this strain for long periods of time, and their efforts are crowned with success. Do you ever feel jealous of others around you? Your friend or acquaintance who was once at your level but has gone on to bigger things, perhaps making more money, with more status, attracting more attention than you? Perhaps you feel they had access to opportunities that you didn't, on account of their charm or their connections or their outgoing personality, whatever it may be. They had one up on you. Perhaps this person's success is making you feel inferior and uncomfortable about your own lack of progress in the world. While their future and life trajectory skyrocketed, yours seemed to have stagnated and not really changed for the better. This feeling of jealousy and injustice is a good feeling, and you should never let it go. because this is the feeling that will lead you to success. Dissatisfaction is a force that will get you out of the deep hole you're stuck in. You are not supposed to feel good all the time. These negative feelings you are experiencing are extremely important for you to be having, so do not make efforts to suppress them. The negative feelings you often experience are the exact feelings that will lead you to success in life. The more powerful these emotions, the more effective they become. It has been said that men are often born predestined for success. If you too wish to be made for success, then you need to become more hungry for it than anyone else around you. Be more dissatisfied with your current life. Be more jealous. Yearn stronger for the life that you don't have. That friend who overtook you, vow to overtake him. That person that looked down on you and thought himself above you, take revenge by overtaking his success and never paying him a moment's worth of attention again. This feeling of jealousy is a gift. It is the strongest motivator you have to force yourself into the world of success, a world that the vast majority of men cannot gain entry to. When feeling jealousy towards another's position in life, there are usually two approaches to be taken. One is to bring that person down to your level, and the other, the much more intelligent approach, is to push yourself up above their level. This is the approach I recommend to you. Don't use jealousy to launch an attack on another. Any attack you launch on another will put yourself at risk of damage to body and reputation. As they say, the best form of revenge is to go on to achieve massive success. Be honest with yourself about your good and bad traits and attributes. Choose a field that matches you both physically and mentally. If you are introverted, then work requiring extroversion is best avoided. If you wish to work your way up the hierarchy of your company and be a leader of people, then consider the usual attributes that help. If you are sensitive, then work that requires a high level of mental perceptiveness or creativity is perhaps best. Your biggest head start in life will be finding a calling that you are naturally suited to. It could save you decades. If you have no idea how best to proceed, start retaining. It was in the midst of a 6-month streak that the ideas of my own future came into view and compelled me to quit my previous path and forge a new one. The seeds of your success lie in the way you choose to think. Your mind is the ultimate instrument to bring concepts from the mental world into the physical world. If you desire something strongly enough, your mind and body will do all within its power to make that happen. If you preserve your sexual energy, your path to success will be supplied with the fuel needed to take you above and beyond in your field of endeavor. So get to work and retain your sexual energies. Your future self will thank you for it. I do not see edging as beneficial for one practicing semen retention. The habit of edging will in most cases encourage the habit of sexual fantasy. When a man fantasizes, his testes become activated. You can physically see or feel the activation of the testes when thinking sexual thoughts. They begin to move on their own. In my experience, it is not just semen loss that exhausts you. It is the sexual thoughts themselves that are exhausting. You can come to this conclusion yourself through self-observation. Observe your feelings on the morning after a night of edging and fantasizing versus a night of no sexual thoughts. The difference in energy is night and day. If you try this yourself and recognize the difference, then you will find no greater knowledge than what you have gained from your own self-observation. A man that is constantly entertaining sexual thoughts is keeping themselves in a constant sexual state, a state that boosts sex hormone production. It is likely their testes will be constantly activated from this stimuli. Overactivity of the gonads has been studied in animals. In salmon, eels, and other animals, muscle catabolism is linked to gonadal activity. In eunuchs, that is, castrated males, the absence of gonadal activity extended lifespan. Gonadal activity is a necessary function of reproduction, and as stated in summer theory, reproduction comes at a cost to the organism. The medical term for overactive testes is known as hypergonadism, and upon searching Google, the common symptoms read as follows: increased sex drive and early balding. The link between sexual excess and balding goes back to the times of Aristotle and perhaps even further back, yet the link is not verified scientifically and thus remains a controversial one. Constantly edging will keep your mind full of sexual imagery. It will put you under the spell of lust. The higher human aspirations, such as spirituality, learning, and moral action, will take a back seat to the dominant powers of lustful thought. The gratification of sexual desire usually comes at the cost of mental and spiritual energy. You can receive the short buzz of venereal pleasure, but must pay with your life force. This is a trade-off taking place, a deal with the devil, selling your soul. Don't do it. Keep your human qualities. Keep your humanity. Do not sacrifice everything good and noble about yourself, the human being, for the sake of animal pleasures. Humans are the only animals that can take conscious control of their sex instinct and use those energies for higher purpose. Why did so many athletes throughout history refrain from sex before competition? Why did boxers avoid sex before a big fight? Why did so many great minds of the past refrain from sexual activity? Written in the 1800s. Where one person is injured by sexual commerce, many are made feverish and nervous by harboring lewd thoughts. Rioting in visions of nude women may exhaust one as much as an excess in actual intercourse. There are multitudes who would never spend the night with an abandoned female, but who rarely meet a young girl that their imaginations are not busy with her person. This species of indulgence is well nigh universal, and as it is the source of all the other forms, the fountain from which the external vices spring, the nursery of masturbation and excessive coitus, I am surprised to find how little has been said about it. I have looked over many volumes upon sexual abuses, but do not recall a single earnest discussion of this point, believing that this incontinence of the imagination works more mischief than all other forms of the evil, that indeed it gives rise to all the rest. I am astounded that it has received so little attention. A man that is edging is perhaps more likely to experience night emissions or wet dreams. It is often reported that one feels more depleted after a night emission. A mind constantly engaged in the sexual passions is more likely to overstimulate themselves in the midst of their sleep state. Many on semen retention often report having wet dreams, though how many on semen retention actually refrain from sexually fantasizing and edging? If you are having troubles avoiding wet dreams, then it would be best to eliminate edging and sexual fantasizing completely from your mind. A sexually stimulated mind will more easily trigger an emission than a chaste mind. Constant edging and sexual stimulation is a departure from nature, and I believe this departure to be reflected in the face and body. Someone who is constantly under the spell of lust cannot so easily hide it. They are often betrayed by their own appearance and behavior, their choice of words, the tone of voice, the direction of their conversation. Physical indications such as constant exhaustion, depleted vitality, empty eyes. These signs affect the way in which people interact with you. The signs are there for those perceptive enough to realize them, and most people will sense these signs at least on an instinctual or unconscious level. We are not generally attracted to such traits that indicate a lack of life force. In fact, often they serve to repel us. The practice of conserving our vitality is thus of great importance for the destiny of our lives. It affects the way others perceive us. A man may think his sexual tendencies are hidden and wielding no effect on his life, but this would be false, for the practice sends subtle impressions to those around him, affecting relations on a deeper level. Nothing escapes the attention of nature, and all transgressions of nature will come at a cost to the transgressor. How is one to stop the habit of edging if they find themselves giving in to temptation after making the resolution to quit? One must first eliminate the situations that lead to fantasizing. If it occurs at night time in bed with the smartphone, then putting the phone in another room when going to sleep would be very beneficial. Deciding to sleep at an earlier time and making sure you have moved your body enough throughout the day to fall asleep easily when night comes. If there is a particular site or app that brings these urges, then blocking that site or deleting that app would be very beneficial. Cold showers are famous for lowering the sexual urges. That is perhaps related to why men experience shrinkage after the cold shower. Hot temperatures encourage the sexual passions. This too includes weather and geographic location. Staying cooler helps. Less bed sheets at night if feeling hot can help too. Many yogis recommend a diet to reduce the sexual desires, and recommend less meats, as they are said to contain hormones that stimulate the sexual feeling. Generally, if one can go a week without fantasizing and edging, then the next week should become easier, and the next week even more so still. That is not to say urges will never return, just that as one gets used to a pattern of life, maintaining that pattern of life becomes less of a struggle. Perhaps start with the goal of 1 week or 3 days and see if you can make it to that stretch of time. If you fail, then start again, and if you succeed, raise the bar and set it to a longer period of time until you get a handle on it for long periods of time. The motivation from this should come from the addition of energy you feel from conserving your sexual powers. Many see semen retention as only a physical act, but it is the mental behaviors that are also in need of controlling in order to conserve these sexual energies. The spark of the sexual thought is all it takes to activate the testes. From here we can see how the mental thoughts equate to a physical function, and thus we must guard the thoughts we choose to think if we wish to conserve our sexual essence, our essence of life. Have you ever seen someone completely change their personality and demeanor when an attractive person enters the room? I have seen acquaintances who generally keep a calm and collected persona start almost frothing at the mouth with excitement when a beautiful woman enters the room. I have no doubt in my earlier years also behaved in the same manner. In the presence of beauty, some people's energy changes entirely. It is as if they are under a spell or the influence of a drug. I have seen on many occasions a beautiful woman entrancing a man without words, with merely her presence. Oftentimes the man becomes very upbeat, light-hearted and jokey. I recall a former boss of mine who would suddenly become weak in the knees and overly bubbly and agreeable when an attractive woman came to the office. He would change from a strict, authoritative personality into a friendly, effervescent, happy-go-lucky type of guy. The atmosphere would become light and friendly, and he would giggle and joke around until she had gone, and after that he would return to his strict and serious disposition. It is almost as if some men's biology changes in the presence of a beautiful woman. After all, we are designed for procreation, and an attractive mate seems to trigger this biological imperative within us. As Aldous Huxley wrote, "Beauty is worse than wine. It intoxicates both the holder and beholder." There are, of course, men who maintain their sense of self regardless of who is in the room and don't try to modulate their personality based on the attractiveness of others around them. I believe this to be a mark of good character. What is the difference between a man who is intoxicated by desire and a man who remains composed and unaffected in the face of temptation? Self-control. Self-control is a very important trait for a man to have, yet many men are unable to rein in their lustful feelings. A man with good character puts his values before all else. A man with excessive lust will often undermine his own values in pursuit of its fulfillment. The lustful man is a slave to the flesh, and thus the mere sight of a woman's beauty renders him weak. A man who cannot control his passions reveals a weakness of his character and personality. Perceptive humans, or perhaps older humans, will more readily perceive this weakness of character in the man. A man who is controlled by lust often reveals it in subtle ways. He will drop inadvertent hints. Often he may interpret parts of speech in a lewd way, or inject his speech with sexual innuendo. This will generally become more pronounced after a few drinks of alcohol. A man who cannot control his sexual desires will be more willing to act out of self-interest in order to fulfill those desires he strongly craves. Intense lust can easily erode rational thought and moral judgment. It essentially renders one selfish and stupid. How many times have we seen on TV the man who stumbles over his words when the beautiful woman speaks to him, or the beautiful cheerleader in class who is just as daft as she is beautiful? A beautiful person can just as easily become infatuated with their own beauty and suffer greatly from this infatuation too. As the story goes, Narcissus, the beautiful youth, caught his own reflection in the lake and became consumed by his own image. He remained there, enamored by his own image, until he eventually lost his will to live and wasted away. Often, we label a man who is hooked to chemical substances as a junkie. We know that a junkie will oftentimes go to great lengths to acquire their fix. They may cheat, deceive, and steal in order to get what they need. Such an effect can happen to a man hooked by lustful thoughts. They become an addict to lust. By extension, we can see how external things that try to sexually tempt man or draw lust from him can be destructive. A society of people hooked on beauty and images of the flesh will ultimately degenerate and deteriorate. We have seen anthropologists such as Unwin reach these conclusions studying monogamous and sexually liberal societies. Lust carries the power to weaken a society and ultimately destroy the goodness inherent in man. It is no wonder that the ancient authors of the scriptures strongly warned us of this danger. Even in a physiological sense, the premature awakening of the sexual desire was said to have a negative effect on the organism. Early to ripe, early to rot. The engagement of the reproductive function requires energy and constant feeding of nourishment, which is drawn from the body. A constantly lustful state is continually drawing on these energies and thus sapping them from all other regions of the body. This idea is further supported by summer theory that explains that reproduction shortens the life of the organism. If you are striving to succeed on semen retention, then I assume you are also striving to be a better quality human being. Acting for the good of your fellow man, sharing with others, having love for your neighbor, these are qualities that will make you more valuable and more useful in this world. And those that prove useful in this world will go on to lead worthwhile and fulfilling lives. Those that live for the fulfillment of physical desires will render themselves depleted and put themselves on a trajectory of suffering and degeneration. This is the deeper meaning behind semen retention. It is about becoming a better man in all senses of the word. A moral man, a manly man, a man with good character. We are holding on to the life-giving fluid. When we emit it from the body, it takes our own life with it. A man depleted without abundant life must hold on to what little he has left. He must go into survival mode, and this state of being makes it hard for him to serve anyone other than himself. He is of no use to this world. and nature does not support those that do not give back to nature. You can call this karma or simply cause and effect, but you need to become productive in this world to provide value to others. Help mankind evolve. Nature will reward you accordingly. Make sure your heart is in the right place. Your existence was a gift given to you. Feel appreciation for it. No matter how hard things get, pay your dues by being useful to the world. You will realize as you get older that there is much evil in this world. It all stems from selfish desire, and for men, sexual desire dominates. Rid yourself of this poison, and you will no longer be a slave to its influence. Not many can do this, but if you manage to eliminate lust, a whole new world will open. New opportunities will come your way. You will become capable of doing things that most people cannot. You will exert more energy and affect more change, and over time people will greatly benefit from your existence. This will come back to you in many ways. It will give you meaning to live. Start semen retention and you start out on a new journey in life. You may even change the world. Your concentrated efforts and directed energy will make waves and influence all those around you. In my own experience, I started retention as a musician years ago, and within 12 months I got my first job producing for a major Korean pop group, had a song released by a world-famous DJ, and signed a major licensing deal that netted me decent-sized royalties. You don't know my identity, and I don't say this to boast or brag, just to show you how compelling the effects of semen retention are. All fields of work require energy, and the best in those fields will require higher levels of energy and vitality to carry on intensely for a long period of time without losing steam. Part of the reason semen retention will put you on the road to success is because you are learning to overcome the influence of desire and lust. When sexual desire has a strong hold over your mind, it hinders the mental faculties and prevents deeper inquiry of thought. Saint Augustine is one of Christianity's most influential theologians and philosophers. He profoundly impacted how the Bible is interpreted today. Before his conversion to Christianity, he led a life marked by hedonism and was heavily involved in pursuits of pleasure, including sexual lust. It was after renouncing these passions that he rose to his callings and went down in the pages of history for his great contributions. He wrote, "There are lusts for many things, and yet when lust is mentioned without the specification of its object, the only thing that normally occurs to the mind is the lust that excites the indecent parts of the body. This lust assumes power not only over the whole body, and not only from the outside, but also internally. It disturbs the whole man. When the mental emotion combines and mingles with the physical craving, resulting in a pleasure surpassing all physical delights. So intense is the pleasure that when it reaches its climax, there is an almost total extinction of mental alertness. The intellectual sentries, as it were, are overwhelmed." Saint Augustine is living testament to the divine heights one can reach when he escapes the shackles of lust. Huxley, Newton, Tesla, Gandhi, so many of the greats expressed this same sentiment towards lust and its ability to hinder man's progress. When millions of men are made slave to lustful thoughts, then society becomes enslaved by this impulse. In order to not only free ourselves of this negative energy, but to free our society from it too, we must conquer lust and not be subservient to the temptations of the flesh. We must become immune to the temptations of beauty. We must not allow the physical stimuli of beauty to stimulate us excessively and affect our temperament. We must learn how to switch off this desire and not allow it to control our senses. Breaking free from the enticement of beauty will give you control over your mind. It will give you the power and ability to achieve much more out of life. As Seneca said, "Most powerful is he who has himself in his own power." Everybody is judged in life on what they bring to the table. If you were born with attractive looks, then you have been gifted inherent value, which gives you credit for merely existing. For the majority, however, you'll have to create your own value. The best way to build value in this world is to become the master of your craft. To become so good in your chosen field that you exceed 99% of others in it. The SR manuscript. 2 years of writing and research on the topic of semen retention. If you wish to physically own a copy of the ancient archives, then this book is for you. People recognize talent and quality as they are not easy traits to achieve. They require long-term work and dedication. Mastery requires an intense level of energy, focused and directed into a single goal over a long stretch of time. If you are working on your craft, yet you still spend much time engaged in sexual fantasy, then you are diverting valuable energy away from that craft and thus diminishing your overall talents and abilities, diminishing your overall value. If 2 men start in the same field of work, yet one man spends 2 hours a day fantasizing and masturbating, which man do you think will excel the furthest? In a world where 99% of men regularly masturbate, your choice to abstain will allow you to progress faster and develop further along than the 99% of distracted men around you in your field. The simple act of semen retention will put you in the upper echelons of those pursuing your craft in a very short time. It is the ultimate weapon, and you should see it that way, if accruing value and building talent is important to you. Investing all of your energy into your craft and no energy into masturbation will fast-track your development far beyond the efforts of the average man. Without the distractions of sex, the level of energy you can invest into your work will dramatically increase, and as a result, you will understand the subject matter at a deeper level. You will pick up on subtleties in your work that others miss. You will begin to see the connections and relationships between objects that your previously distracted brain didn't recognize. Ultimately, you will become unmatched in your field. The choice to abstain will pay you large dividends into the future of your career. It is the key to unlocking your latent powers and talents that have long remained dormant within you. Semen retention today is such a minority activity that the simple act of retaining will give you the biggest edge over the competition in your field. And if your wish is to monetize or make a living from your craft at some point in future, then a competitive edge will be of much interest to you. The average man loses so much of his time and energies through the habit of sexual fantasy and masturbation that oftentimes his career and life goals suffer as a result. For the masturbator, focusing on his goals will be accompanied by the constant nagging of lust, knocking at his door and inviting him out to play. If one cannot ignore this distraction, then he will not get far in life. He will not become master of his craft. You must eliminate this distraction if you wish to go far in life. Without sexual distractions, one simply has more energy at their own disposal. With this increase in energy, the ability to absorb information increases. More bits of information are being absorbed into the brain, thus the retainer's output reflects this level of quality and attention to detail that the distracted mind lacks. Before attractiveness, before social skills, before anything else of value, the most important trait for a human to have is energy. Low energy will yield low results. High energy will yield high results in all facets of life. In the workplace, energetic people tend to have more success than low energy types. In the sports arena, high energy athletes dominate. In dating and courtship, energy is rewarded. Energy is king. And if you want to be of value in the world, then before every other trait and skill, you must set your sights on energy acquisition. The preservation of your sexual forces is by far the most important practice for generating energy. That is because reproduction is your biological imperative, and your body prioritizes resources for reproduction and invests much of your body's energies into the efforts of reproduction, even at the cost of your overall lifespan. Reproduction and reproductive activities carry an energetic burden on the body. Free yourself of this burden and you free up energy. Once you start accumulating energy, you will find that your mind steadily becomes more capable, more creative, and more ambitious. The strength of your will becomes stronger, and as a result, your talents begin to flourish. If you're intent on escaping the rat race and working for yourself, then a mind that has overcome the distraction of sex will be indispensable to achieving this. Before you decide to quit your job and work for yourself, make sure you have a handle on your sexual desires. Once you have gained control over your desires, you will be able to achieve more, to go further, and to break out of whatever obstacles are currently holding you back. All of your ambitions and goals in life are contingent on you having adequate energy to achieve them. In 3 to 6 months of retention, your energy levels will become abundant enough to carry out goals that seem near out of reach at the moment. I'm speaking here from direct experience. I spent 19 years on a craft in my 20s and 30s, whilst being often distracted by women and thoughts of sex, and never made it far enough in that craft to survive full-time. However, after 6 months into retention, I started another area of work and went further in 2 years than I did in the 19 years of my previous craft. Semen retention works. I discovered from the analysis of over 25,000 people that men who succeed in an outstanding way seldom do so before the age of 40, and more often they do not strike their real pace until they are well beyond the age of 50. This fact was so astounding that it prompted me to go into the study of its cause most carefully, carrying the investigation over a period of more than 12 years. This study disclosed the fact that the major reason why the majority of men who succeed do not begin to do so before the age of 40 to 50 is their tendency to dissipate their energies through overindulgence in physical expression of the emotion of sex. The majority of men never learn that the urge of sex has other possibilities, which far transcend in importance that of mere physical expression. The majority of those who make this discovery do so after having wasted many years at a period when the sex energy is at its height, prior to the age of 45 to 50. This usually is followed by noteworthy achievement. The lives of many men up to and sometimes well past the age of 40 reflect a continued dissipation of energies which could have been more profitably turned into better channels. Their finer and more powerful emotions are sown wildly to the four winds. Out of this habit of the male grew the term sowing his wild oats. The desire for sexual expression is by far the strongest and most impelling of all human emotions, and for this very reason, this desire, when harnessed and transmuted into action other than that of physical expression, may raise one to the status of a genius. If you're finding yourself caught in the cycle of relapsing and unable to exert the power to control yourself, then you need to strengthen your will. This comes down to an emotional feeling in your body. Start by setting a future goal for your life on paper. Even better is writing it on a whiteboard in your room. A goal for where you'd like to be in your life in 2 years' time. The more details, the better. Where you'll live, your income, your body and appearance, your partner. Build a dream world of the future that you wish to live in. Just as you invest energy into sexual fantasy, invest energy into visualizing this future so that you can almost see it. Your brain's job is to take ideas from the thought realm and manifest them into physical reality. So build an idea of where you'd like to be and start to feel emotionally that this is where you're heading towards. This visualization is extremely powerful and when your vision is coupled with high energy, your body and brain will go to work at making your vision a reality. If you become absolutely enthralled by the idea of your future life and future self, your mind will stop at nothing until you become this ideal. The energy you gain from retaining will launch you far into this life trajectory that you have mapped out. It will put you on the road to success. Make no mistake, you will need to do the actual work, but with conserved sexual energy at hand and a strong sense of will, you will become a force to be reckoned with, and with this power, you can bring your dreams into reality. Since ancient times, the world has been under a constant battle between the powers of good and evil, entities of a creative and of a destructive nature. The human body is a receptacle of these powers and can thus be compelled to action by either force. A human can act for the will of creation or the will of destruction. Goodness is creation. Man was born to create. Thus man was born good, untarnished by evil and sinful thought. You are the seed of creation, and you embody this life principle. Your very nature is creative. Evil is degeneration. It leads to destruction and premature death. One that practices evil is by nature degenerate and degenerating themselves. You have ultimate discernment as to which forces you utilize, and as a result of your choices, you will become that force. A force for good or a force for evil. The forces of evil are very seductive. They lure men in with promises of pleasures and riches, promises of fame and sensual gratification, beyond their wildest dreams. If man is to allow these entities to enter him, he must accept their terms, and must pay dearly with his body and his soul. This process is just as much a physiological one as it is a spiritual one. Much of the evil that exists in this world originates from an unrestrained sexual desire. Even ambitions for riches, recognition, and fame generally stem from this same desire. A lustful mind will gradually erode the moral fibers of a person and inspire selfishness and evil deeds to be committed. Often, one under the control of a lustful impulse will be quick to betray his loved ones and friends for sexual opportunity. They will go against their fellow man for personal gain, for sexual satisfaction. Some may even harm others in the pursuit of this pleasure. We see this most commonly in cases of infidelity, which in the modern world is hardly a rare phenomenon. Lust corrupts the soul of a person by destroying their sense of humanity and compassion. It entices one to pursue sexual desire beyond all else. That is why lust is considered a perversion of nature. The destructive energy of lust has been known since the dawn of humanity, and warnings against its dark power exist in almost all major religions and scriptures. It is said that the man who indulges in immorality and lustful desire will travel down the path of his own destruction. He will desecrate his inner kingdom. As is written in the ancient scriptures, carnal lust and promiscuous sex is a sin. Flee from sexual immorality. Every other sin a person commits is outside the body, but the sexually immoral person sins against his own body. In biology, Summer theory states that the cost of reproduction and sexual activity is said to carry a physiological burden on the organism. A multitude of studies on insects, animals, and plants have found that reproductive activity shortens lifespan. Tesla writes how sexual activity comes at a cost to one's mental faculties, and Newton claimed celibacy to be his greatest accomplishment. The ancient scriptures similarly state that the desires of the flesh are in conflict with the spirit. For the flesh lusteth against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. And these are contrary the one to the other, so that ye cannot do the things that ye would. The ancients warned man of the dangers of lust and immorality, and considered it a defilement of one's own body, of one's own soul, an act that would prevent man from entering the kingdom of heaven. As said in Galatians, the works of the flesh are evident: sexual immorality, impurity, sensuality, idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, rivalries, dissensions, divisions, envy, drunkenness, orgies, and things like these. I warn you, as I warned you before, that those who do such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. One may ask, what exactly is the kingdom or heaven of God? Some say it is a place. Some say it is within you, that there is a kingdom of God within you. Do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have from God, and that you are not your own? For you have been bought with a price. Therefore, glorify God in your body. Man defiles the temple by preventing the seed from going up, or returning to the upper brain, the cerebrum. In short, he eats of the fruit of the tree of life, and therefore it cannot arise or return to the kingdom, the optic thalamus, and become the light in the chamber where it may cleanse from all sin. In this way, the kingdom of heaven is reached by preserving the seed in the body. 1 John chapter 3 verse 9 declares, "No one who is born of God will continue to sin, because God's seed remains in him." Vine's expository dictionary states, "The seed signifies the principle of spiritual life, as imparted to the believer." The seed is the word of God. Degenerates and people living in excesses have become greatly deficient in this precious material, and the whole appearance of the body testifies to the desecration of the temple. Man can become regenerated, and thus save his soul, which is sown in corruption, so that it may be raised in corruption. The essence of your life and existence on this physical plane is sustained by the power of the seeds within you. To keep these seeds, you must keep evil and immoral thoughts out. You must take precautions to not allow Satan to enter your heart. As soon as we begin to hate sin, Satan must give way. He reigneth only in sin, in darkness, and can enter the heart only through sin. The love of sin gives him the key to the heart. The attachment to evil opens doors and gate, and gives free access to the heart. A love to God and goodness, hatred of sin, closes the entrance and repels him from the heart. Oh, dear souls, love the light and hate the evil. Resist the devil, and he will flee far from you. Be very aware of sexual temptations. They will often first entice you with a smaller transgression before leading you on to a larger one. Written in the 1600s. Seriously to consider that the giving way to a less sin makes way for the committing of a greater. He that to avoid a greater sin will yield to a lesser. Sin is of an encroaching nature. It creeps on the soul by degrees, step by step, till it hath the soul to the very height of sin. When you feel the pull of lust, visualize the insidious demonic entity that is trying to enter you, attempting to infiltrate your heart and siphon your life force. On some occasions, they may even take the form of a human known as succubi or succubus, which are demonic entities that seek to seduce a man for his sperm and inseminate it into a woman to create a demonic child on the physical plane. Your life force is very valuable to these entities and is thus highly sought after. The presence of the Creator lies within you. That is to say, the God that created you is a part of you. You are housing the seeds of life within your body, and you must protect them from external forces. Only that which you are aware of can you defeat. Become aware of these evil forces, and it will be easier to close the door and reject the unwelcomed visit. When the demons of lust come knocking at your door, you must not answer it. Forbid their entry, and they'll be gone. Do not give in to lust. For men throughout history, much importance has been placed on the development of manliness. Not only the ideal physical form, but the mental qualities of strength, bravery, and physical skill were of vast importance for a man to survive and thrive in the ancient world. In many tribes, ancient rituals were held and challenges were given to boys that were centered around showing courage and strength in the face of danger. These rituals were a rite of passage to becoming a man, because without these masculine traits, it would have been difficult for a man to survive the harsh conditions of life. Man was a hunter. Life is a lot easier in the modern day. We are currently living in the most pampered and comfortable state of human history, and as a result, we have become physically and mentally weaker. For men, the importance of manliness and masculinity is less a focal point than that for previous generations. As the saying goes, hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. In the ancient era, where death was rampant, manliness was important, as it implied survival. Throughout history, the word courage has often been connected to the gonads. It was often said that the amount of one's courage was in direct proportion to the size of the gonads. He has big balls. Although it is not a phrase that one may often take literally, the gonads are the production centers of testosterone, the sex hormone directly connected to one's courage. There is a very real connection between the gonads and one's level of courage. Many of the traits men are known for, aggressiveness, virility, bravery, stem from the gonads and the hormones produced by them. To have healthy, well-functioning gonads is to have all the traits of manhood. At puberty, when the testes begin producing semen, they begin producing the traits of a man. As a man reaches his physical prime, his gonads are also in their prime, and that is why a young man generally shows more courage, aggressiveness, and oftentimes recklessness during this age. An older man will have the benefit of experience, but will often lack the vitality and virility of his younger counterpart. He becomes more cautious. We know from history that eunuchs, that is, servants who had their testicles removed, were well known for their timidity and perhaps cowardice, along with highly feminized physical traits. Your manhood, your courage, and your strength is in your gonads, and language reveals this. Much of our language is subtly imbued in this wisdom that we often unconsciously use. The phrase, "He is half the man you are," often implies man to be connected with bravery. To say that this man has big balls is to say he is brave. The implication in this is that the more of a man you are, the more brave and courageous you will be. The traits of courage and manhood were a virtue in ancient Greece, known by the word andreia. Even the origin of this word courage comes from the Greek word for a male adult. Conversely, excessive sexual indulgence has been linked to the decline of man and deterioration of society. All throughout history, in different tribes and cultures, there were vastly differing customs and habits regarding the use of the sex function, and thus gonadal activity. The anthropologist J.D. Unwin studied many primitive civilizations and their sexual habits. he found that the civilizations practicing monogamy had more social energy, were more expansive, dominant, and advanced in thought and culture. After studying 86 civilizations, he concluded, "The evidence is that a cultural advance has been caused by a factor which produces thought, reflection, and social energy, and that it occurs only when the sexual opportunity has been limited. Therefore, the limitation of the sexual opportunity must be regarded as the cause of the cultural advance. Continence, sexual abstinence, must be regarded as the immediate cause of a cultural advance. Any extension of sexual opportunity must always be the immediate cause of a cultural decline. Any human society is free to choose either to display great energy or to enjoy sexual freedom. The evidence is that it cannot do both for more than one generation." Unwin's findings ultimately led him to conclude that cultural achievement was attained through the practice of sexual restraint. A man with his gonads intact, without excessive depletion of his sexual essence, will hold a very strong power inside of him. It is the power that so easily escapes through the channels of sensual pleasure, but when kept contained within, that energy permeates all the other areas of the being. Some refer to this as sexual transmutation. Ancients referred to it as a form of sexual alchemy. The ancient Chinese referred to it as Huangjin Bunao, or returning the semen to the brain. The testes make the man, and it is reasonable to think that a man constantly engaging in masturbation and ejaculation will be losing a lot of these sex hormones produced from the testes. In his book on sexual neurasthenia, Trell writes that there exists among the Pueblo Indians who descended from the Aztecs effeminate men known as mujerados. They have well-developed mammary glands, rounded and soft limbs, shrunken genital organs, high, thin, cracked voices. In order to make a mujerado, a very strong man is selected. Masturbation is performed on him many times a day. He has to ride continuously on horseback without saddle. By this process, the genital organs become much excited, and seminal losses are produced. The nutrition of the organs is interfered with. They grow smaller and weaker, and, in time, desire and power cease. Then follow the changes in character. Courage and manhood are lost. In this description, we can see how the purposeful evacuation of the seminal fluids and constant excitation of the gonads leads to a weakening of the manhood and loss of these traits associated with manliness, such as courage. This notion was in line with the renowned O.S. Fowler, who wrote that whatever impairs the physical sexuality thereby impairs the mental sexuality, and as overindulgence does this, therefore, whoever gives way to this passion proportionally impairs his manhood. You can see signs of this all around. Today's generation of men are often said to be weaker and less masculine than previous generations. A generation who grew up with a smartphone in hand and 24-hour access to pornography with the touch of a button. For those who grew up in the 90s and before, access to pornography was a lot more difficult and taboo. Without any concrete figures, I can safely assume that masturbation rates have skyrocketed among the youth since the 90s and introduction of smartphones. Specifically, more masturbation equates to more semen loss and increased activity of the gonads. Could this increase in access to porn and masturbation be responsible for the loss of manhood that is often talked about regarding today's generation? Could this increase of semen loss be the cause of some process of feminization, as was the case illustrated among mujerados? There is currently not enough evidence here, of course, so this remains just a theory. As R. Bernard writes, there is an intimate physiological connection between the gonads and the brain, each competing with the other in drawing from the blood lecithin and other substances essential for their nutrition and activity. When the sex glands are overactive, the brain is adversely affected. Those practicing semen retention will often experience feelings associated with manliness, such as aggression, dominance, and courage. Above all else, a retaining man is learning self-control. Semen retention will develop your self-control and discipline, and this type of man has always progressed further in society. Becoming this type of man will improve your trajectory in life. Nature will support a man of courage more than a man of cowardice. As Terence McKenna said, nature loves courage. You make the commitment, and nature will respond to that commitment by removing impossible obstacles. Dream the impossible dream, and the world will not grind you under. It will lift you up. This is the trick. So practice semen retention and work on your passions, sharpen your skills, and develop your craft. These masculine qualities are qualities that will only benefit you in the world. This manliness is an expression of one's male biology in its most natural state, and that is the state that will benefit you most in this world, because it is natural. Don't let this world make you soft and weak. Become stronger, become braver, become more of a man. Practice semen retention.